And Australia isn't the only country reassessing its defense priorities. South Korea is doing the same. It has two difficult neighbors, North Korea and China, and Seoul is debating an old but urgent question. Should it have nuclear weapons? So far, they've relied on America's support, their so-called nuclear security umbrella. But can it be trusted anymore? South Korea is not very sure about Washington's commitment. Its president, Yoon Suk-yeol, is on a visit to the US, his first as president. And his agenda is quite clear. He wants solid assurances from the White House. Given North Korea's nuclear threats and missile testing spree, can the South count on America's nuclear arsenal, or should it acquire its own? Our next report has more. Tensions are rising in the Korean peninsula. North Korea is firing missiles like there's no tomorrow. Pyongyang calls them tests meant to deter its supposed enemies. Countries in the region are anxious. Japan recently had to issue emergency evacuation orders for its citizens in Hokkaido. The reason behind the scare? A North Korean long-range missile. So the situation in the region is volatile, which is why South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol is on a state visit to the United States. He boarded a flight for Washington today and will be in the US for the next 5 days. President Joe Biden is going to host him for a high-stakes summit. It's a summit that could decide the fate of relations between both these nations. And South Korea has some big asks. It is questioning America's commitment to its security. It is unsure whether Washington would intervene in case a conflict with North Korea or China breaks out. Seoul needs to be prepared for a nuclear attack from North Korea. Technically, some vague American promises are already in place. Washington even has a term for them. It's called extended deterrence. Basically, South Korea is eligible to be protected under the American nuclear umbrella. But that's not enough for Seoul. It wants a bigger say in operating the USA's extended deterrence assets. Seoul says both sides are working to make the deterrence more concrete. Reports say President Biden would pledge quote-unquote substantial steps to deter a North Korean nuclear attack. They're said to be working on a joint document too. It outlines the conditions for the US to retaliate with nuclear weapons if South Korea is attacked. If this document sees the light of day, it will be the first time that the US promises nuclear retaliation in a written document. And South Korea will be the first non-NATO ally to get such a written assurance. The joint document could even include a significant provision, one which allows for the deployment of American nuclear assets on the Korean peninsula at the request of South Korea. The nuclear debate was reignited in January when President Yoon made a startling suggestion. He argued that it was time for South Korea to develop nuclear weapons. Pretty soon he backtracked, but by then, as they say, the cat was out of the bag. Public sentiment was in favor of having nukes. Polls say more than 70% of South Koreans want their country to develop nuclear weapons. Another poll found that 54% of the respondents do not trust America's assurances. They said the US would not risk its own safety to protect South Korea. So the US must assure that it's not making empty promises and that it's willing to stand by and defend its allies. It has a lot of damage control to do. Highly classified American documents have made their way to the public domain. They show how Washington has been spying on allies, including South Korea. Seoul has not publicly condemned the Americans for this, but the issue may come up in private conversations.